The tutorial you're watching now has been recorded live, so if you want to meet me and or chat with me, you can find me every Saturday 11 AM CET. The link is in the description. So, tutorial about screeches. So we'll make 4 of them, and an extra tip for a way to turn any preset into a screech. The first one we'll do is really classic. It's a really basic one that you've heard in many tracks. I'll give the example here right now. So like this. So really classic, really basic hostile screech. We'll recreate it from scratch. And yeah, it's a really basic one. We'll need the 2 oscillators here, both with the default waveform. A lot of detune will be going on, a lot of voices also, at least 8. And the same goes for both of them. So now we already have something that should sound kind of like a screech. So we have something that kind of sounds like a screech, kind of. The next thing we're gonna do is give a little bit of movement to the screech already. So give a bit of movement to this whole thingy here. So what I'll do is create a nice shape here. Something like this, like a ramp. Put it in envelope mode and put the rate to half a bar. If I'm half a bar or half a step. Anyway, I'm good with that. Now I will go to the matrix here, pull the LFO1, go here on the global master tune, and the value will be completely on the left, and make sure it's like not bipolar but only unipolar value. And basically what it will do is it will get the pitch down effect following this thingy here on the global tune of the preset. And it also adds this nice crunch at the end if you want it. So that's something kind of interesting to do. Something else we can do is maybe add a little bit of attack in that preset. So here I'll make another shape, kind of really like harsh like this, just to add a little bit of something on the attack. Put it in envelope also. So I'll pull this one also on the master tune. And here I think minus 19 is enough, maybe more. Yeah, we'll see until we hear the right. It's really harsh. It's really harsh right now, but don't worry. First, put it in unipolar. It adds this nice like click. I will not say click because it's kind of in the low, but like kind of nice attack on the sound. It's a bit harsh right now, but it will be better once we turn on all the effects. And the first one we're gonna do, and that will polish all the sound and make it even more screechy, is the hyper dimension. Put the rate to the max, the detune to the max, and put 7 voice and a little bit more here. So it sounds like this now. So now we start to have something really interesting, sounding a lot like a screech, and we can add the blessed OTT. Keep everything default, just add a little bit of gain and turn on the multiband, of course. If this attack here is a bit too much, you can reduce it like this. It's up to you. Or if it's just the amount going a bit too crazy, or here you don't want it like this or whatever, you can shape it the way you want. That's just the basic for it. And the last thing, if you might have any problem at some point with the low frequency, you can just like cut them. What I do to cut the low is, instead of using the low cut, which will have a really weird shape, I prefer to just go with the gain like this, and then change the frequency to around 150 or 200. And that's how you have the most basic and classic hardstyle screeches. So it's really simple, basically 2 saws, a lot of detune. Based on the detune, it will change a lot, like here. Like, the detune is really important. Don't be scared to go really crazy. You would never go that far for a normal sound like a saw, a hyper saw, something. But for screeches, it adds a lot of like texture to it. So yeah. You can play around with this, and it's just the start. The next thing we'll do is just add some small thingies on that screech to have it a bit more distorted, basically. The only thing that will change is basically just the distortion. Not gonna lie, so I'll just add it right away. So the drive, put it all the way to the max, nothing else, just a tube distortion. Going full after the hyper dimension, because the hyper and dimension will add some info for the distortion to work with, and it will create a lot more texture like that than the other way around. I'll show you both versions. So now you have a nice textured screech. If I would move the hyper dimension and the distortion around, it has a lot less grain and small sounds way more saturated like that, which is what you want for hardstyle. You like the saturation when it's clean but saturated. It's like, yeah, sounds way better. So that's it for the 2 first screeches, which is basically the same screech but the other one with distortion added. The next one we're gonna do is a bit different in many aspects. I'll give you a listen to the screech itself. There we go. So it sounds like this. A lot more screamy kind of screech. That's why I call this one Scream. And this one will start from scratch because we cannot reuse much of the stuff that are here. Menu, init preset. So this one will use a lot less unison voices. Still quite some detune. Not as much as before. Just will not touch that thing right away. Will not touch these things either. I'll already create a first LFO for the pitch, and this will be a bit different. Pro tip in by the way, pro tip in Serum, if you hold Alt, you will snap to the lines that you can see here. So if I move around like this, I can move freely. If I hold Alt key, it will stick to the grid, just so you know. So yeah, I will remove this point, I don't need it. I will create again a nice kind of ramp like this, make it an envelope, go like this, somewhere around that, yeah, and put it in bar instead of like split it in smaller and faster rhythm, because here it will be a full development. And now we'll go to the metrics. I'll pull the LFO1, set it on global master tune. The value here, -45. That's usually what I go with for this kind of sounds, just so you know. Put it in unipolar, and that's it for that small LFO. It sounds like this so far. So you have this nice texture at the beginning of the sound, which is nice to add some information, because again it will use some distortion. And you need this kind of grainy sound really at on the lower part of the sound. So that's something to keep in mind. Often use sometimes just some sub here can add a lot of texture and information if you play it really low with not too much volume, because it should not be like too hearable. But even if it's really low, like let's say -4, it's like on the lower frequency you can nearly not hear it right now in the sound. But if you input that into the distortion later, it will kind of interact with the other frequency after it goes in the distortion, and it will create a little bit more texture. So that's a nice tip to have. Like, it's not supposed to be like over the top and really hearable, but it just adds this nice texture. Something else we can do is add some envelope here. Some really short ones. Sorry for the dog barking at the back. Something like this. Yes. I'll put that again on the master tune. Envelope 2, master tune, and all the way down. Just to add something extra to this. It's not much more than that. Then the next thing I'm gonna do is go to the effects, of course. Go to the hyper dimension again. Put the hyper to the max with 7 voices, and add a lot more of the wet. So it creates this nice sounding screech, but you'll see it's not as screamy as before. I'll show you how to make it scream, of course. Add the distortion again. Can already compress that shit a little bit. There we go. And EQ again, because you can still hear a little bit of the sub right now, so I'll just like remove it. Frequency like this. Can you hear the difference between when the sub is on and when the sub is off? It's like really make that part here, the very beginning of the sound, really scrappy and like it kind of has some trouble actually getting out, you know? And that's what you want. If you do not want that thing that harsh, you can already remove that thing, it's okay. But now I remember I talked about make that thing scream. Let's go for the screaming boy. So here you'll need this. So the band, add a little bit of drive and fatness, and then a really nice peaking frequency like that. And then find the right frequency. Probably somewhere there. By default, I will put everything to go in the sound here. And something you can do is add another LFO to move that thing around, which will create even more movement to your sound. So I don't want it to harsh from the get-go, so I'll go like this. Maybe a bit smaller here, and then move that thing down, and then it will go back up, but I'll probably lower its value. And yeah, of course I have to set it to a bar and on envelope. Maybe a bit more. So now you have something really screaming. The difference is really... And maybe something you could do, but yeah, you can do that in an EQ outside of this. I like to move around the high frequency a bit more. To make it a bit brighter, because now it was a bit too much in the mid area and not bright enough to my taste. There we go. So that's the third one, and the last one is a bit more complex. It's based on the same system here, but you know, we have one peak frequency here. What about having like 20 of them? And that's where it becomes really interesting. You have some really nice screamy sounds going on. And then I'll give some other tips about all that, of course. The other thing we can... I didn't do yet, sorry, but we can do is, of course, change all these waveform, and that's one of the things we'll do for this sound here, the last one. So we can take the same bass as the previous one, so this bass here. There is quite some small stuff that will change it here, but it's not that much. Basically, the hyperdimension will stay, the tube distortion will stay, the EQ will change a lot. The EQ will change a lot, because we'll use that to add some more screaming to the sound. And also, the filter will change a lot, because there is one filter in Serum that is really interesting. And that filter is in the flange section or in the misc section. Yeah, the misc, it's the reverb. So you see here, it creates all these peaks here and there. And we will use that to input that into the distortion, because what creates this nice screaming sound and fat sound is like all these peaks going through the distortion. So we'll do that. I'll just reduce that thing like that, and I'll go down a little bit. I'll pick the frequency precisely, because it's kind of really a pain in the ass if it's not correctly set. So it's 39, so you know. So let's go like this. I will remove the resonance, because you don't need like resonance. It will remove the peaks more than actually create some. And here, reduce the drive a little bit, because it might be too much if I do not do that. And now we'll change a bit here the two oscillators. First, we're gonna enable the second one. Have 8 voice on both of them. Maybe you can have 7 on this one. Yeah, we can have 7 on this one, so there is something really dead center. It might be interesting. Reduce the detune a little bit. So I can already give a listen to what it sounds like. So now it's really harsh, but don't worry. We'll fix that in a minute by EQing. But if you want that EQ to go in the distortion, we have to reorder all this stuff. Yeah, we're gonna change these to the bell thingies. Have the gain up quite a bunch. It should be like 17, 18 dB. Like have this nice peak here. Have that frequency somewhere here. And make it a bit wider, and here have it like this, and have it like this, just to create a second peak somewhere there, maybe a bit lower, more like this, somewhere here. And now we talk about screaming, you know. Now we talk about screaming. Now we can reuse that thing to make the frequency move and add more movement to the sound again. So that's what we're gonna do here. And I'll go to the matrix to manage that thing, because it might be a bit too tedious to do it in the other thing, because here the value is really visible and you can manage that a bit better. So now we have something really screaming, really screaming. It's can be a bit much. We can maybe reduce the high frequency. So yeah, we have this thing so far. We can maybe try to fine tune some really small details. I'm thinking maybe I'll disable all the effects for now. And maybe go with the raw sound and try to make the bass sound a bit better. And then put it back in all the effects. And that will also kind of link for the next section, which will be turn any sound into a screech. So here I'll take an LFO and try to create like as if I would make like a lead for a track, a top lead. And here really fast. So now it should be a bit better, I think, when we go through all the effects. So with the reverb filter, the hyper dimension, yeah, that's the thing. Here maybe reduce the hyper dimension a little bit because it's already quite detuned by, I would say detuned by the filter here. What we can do now is just move around and change the waveform and see how it sounds like. That's kind of interesting. Like the added tone by this filthy wavetable waveform. So yeah, this one is a. That's a nice screech, and you add all your effects behind that. So probably some low cut and all this kind of stuff. I'll just pull my own mixer preset for that because I do not start from scratch all the time. I just have a base for it and move it as I need it. There we go. Okay, and I'll just lower that frequency to 200 for the sake of it. So yeah, put a lot of reverb on it, but it's sidechained, so it's a bit less present, but I can reduce the reverb and delay. So yeah, that's the basic for the screeches. So the main key ingredients are always have a bass sound, add some movement to it, put it through. It's not mandatory, but I like to make it go through some hyper dimension stuff to add some detune to it. Then the distortion, and then some compression and or EQing. The EQing can go before the distortion to add some extra screaminess, I would say, or some fine tune of some sort. and also play a lot with the filter. There are a couple of them that are actually really nice, like you have here the reverb one, but if I'm not mistaken, you can use also the comp filter that will also give some nice peak frequencies. But yeah, my go-to is the reverb one, because it's really nice. It makes the sound a bit more floating in a way, but then because of all the treatment that is done to it, it's like star screaming again. So that's something I like to do. Yeah, so the last part is how to turn any sound into exactly that kind of stuff. So like into a screech. It's really easy. If you have Serum, you probably have its browser, which is called Serum FX. And what is nice with Serum FX is that you can load a preset from that you made for a synth, load it into Serum FX, which I cannot do exactly right now, because if I save this preset, I cannot open it because I did not install the latest version of Serum FX. But I do have a preset that does exactly the same. It's not here, it's in user, and I have, where is it? Auto Screecher. So what it does, I'll enable the filter. Nothing will happen in that area right now. I'll explain why and how to make it work, basically. But we can make the sound of a VST, the VST come into this filter using a specific way. And the effects, again, hyperdimension, you can play around, give more detune, less detune. It's up to you. Again, some EQ that will move together with the sound. Here you can see some compression, and of course the distortion before that. So that's the base for it. But now I need something to enter here, and that's where it's a bit more tricky. But you see, as soon as I enable the noise, here it says audio in. So basically it will take the audio that enters the insert and make it go through this part here. And if you wanted, you could have also some other oscillators here, and it would work. And it will go through the noise. I will not use these, but go through the noise. It will also trigger the LFOs, and it will trigger also the envelopes, and it will trigger everything as if it was an actual instance of Serum, except that you can input any sound you want. So it will also go through the filter and then through the chain here, as it usually do when you use it as Serum FX. So that's the trick here. How do you make the sound come in? Well, basically, if I pull, I'll just go for, you know what? I'll just pick a flex preset. Maybe not a bell because it might be a bit too much. Maybe. So I'll pull this sound. I'll remove the reverb and delay because otherwise it will be really crazy with the distortion. I'll also reduce the it's the release. Okay, so I'll use that. I'll input that on the Serum FX, but you cannot hear anything. If I remove here the noise, you can hear it goes through the effects, but if I enable the noise, it will not work. Why? Well, basically because Serum needs a MIDI info to say, now you're supposed to trigger everything, now you're not supposed to trigger everything. And to do that, you can go here on the small cog, you go on the second tab, input port, you pick a port. I will go for port 1. Beware that if you already use some port on other thingy, it will be problematic. What I like to do to make sure that I trigger everything from one location only is here, that VST. I will also make it, I cannot do that? Oh, come on. Okay, if it was another VST than Flex, I would make the input also, like if I pull Serum again, Here I would go again on the cog, go here on the second tab and input on the same port, meaning that this thing and the Serum FX will be triggered at the same time using the same MIDI input. So I'll remove that thing, I do not need it. Yes. I will have to duplicate the MIDI, but it's okay. Here I will add, to trigger that thing, a MIDI out. Because that's what MIDI out is for, is to input MIDI information without playing anything. And it should also trigger the other thing. The MIDI out technique works like a charm, so let's just use the MIDI out technique. So here it's on input port 1. I'll just create here a long note here. I'll do the same here. And now so do you hear the difference? I mean, it's already nice as is, but yeah, not at the sub, at the noise. That's some extra added thickness and movement, because you trigger that LFO here that will move that thing here. So yeah, that's something you can do. That's something you can do with Serum FX. If you have a nice screech with some nice nice things going on in the effects, you can just like save it, open it in Serum FX, route everything correctly, and you have some really interesting sound. So yeah, that's basically it for this whole tutorial on how to create screeches in Serum. Thank you for watching this video. As I said, you can find me every Saturday 11 AM CT on Twitch. The link is down in the description. Beside that, if you want the presets that I made in this tutorial or a lot more presets, I just released a Serum bank containing all the sounds I've created through the year and sounds I use every day in my production. You can check it out. The link is also in the description, together with a promotional code that is worth 10%. It will be valid until the 15th of January 2022, so grab it now. Thanks for watching. See you.